Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Thomas, you have reviewed the Michael Cohen testimony and the news articles surrounding it, people's opinion pieces, and now you're going to let us know what you really think.
Well, Betsy, you sure are calm. Don't you want to say a little bit about that New York rat yourself?
No, I'm exhausted. I'm so tired of this swamp stuff. I'm tired of reading about it. I'm tired of it not going anywhere. I'm just sick and tired of it. And I'm also sick and tired of all of us being played as fools. We already know in Congress it's legal to lie, and all that we saw yesterday were liars lying we all know that they can lie.
The good thing is that he's being put in for a referral for his perjury because he literally said the opposite of what he, in his plea deal, in his agreement that he pled guilty to. So there were numerous lies. The lies were fantastic. And remember, there's three, this is a whole week long of three-ring circus of nonsense. 2 behind closed door testimonies, 1 public. That was yesterday. Okay, so we get to see Jim Jordan in the Oversight Committee absolutely tear him to pieces and basically say, why are we listening to you? I mean, this is a guy who prepared a 30-minute statement, which is supposed to be used now because all the Democrats in that committee, basically, they believe only what was in that statement. They believe that he did not lie, though we have many lies that he told, and they're going to use that for impeachment, okay? That's all they have. And that's the reason the Inspector General hasn't indicted anybody, that Michael Horowitz, that's the reason that the special counsel hasn't really indicted anybody except a bunch of nonsense, except for Michael Cohen and Manafort, both of whom were involved in criminal activities for decades. Let's remember Michael Cohen. Recently, who is Michael Cohen? Well, Mark Meadows came out and put out a beautiful little tweet that said something that he got in trouble for, which was basically he insinuated that Cohen might be asked during these questionings, what about your girlfriends? What is your wife going to think about your girlfriends when that testimony? Are you going to tell the truth on that? And then he said also in the same thing, what is your wife going to do? Is she going to stay faithful to you for the 3 years that you're in prison? Well, the reason he said that is because Michael Cohen's wife's dad is basically he's a mafia boss for holding taxi medallions in New York City. That's the reason that Michael Cohen holds so many of them, because he is indeed married into the family of the mob. But that's only the tip of the iceberg. And you say, well, why was Trump associating with this guy? As he says, Cohen, in his opening statement, I have lied, but I am not a liar. Okay, that's it. That's all he needs to say. Remove him from the room. I have done bad things, but I am not a bad person. I have been a fixer, but I am no longer your fixer, Mr. Trump. Okay, he admitted to being his fixer. Guess what? If you have a lawyer who's a fixer, you do not talk to them about anything real because they're your fixer. You don't want to know. You don't want to be culpable. If, and I don't believe it for 1 second, there were prostitutes that came forward, of course your lawyer would use his retainer to pay them off so that there was nothing ever written down. There was no record of it. There was no trace that your boss, who you're the fixer for, had anything to do with it. So we know that David Brock came up with the 4 prostitutes, 2 of which, the ones that we know of, stuck in there trying to accuse Trump of this. Well, of course, if that did come up, then of course Michael Cohen, the fixer, would have taken care of that. Now, he says that he wired $135,000 to Stormy Daniels' lawyer. Well, we know that then the evidence that he presented, which they tried a lawyer trick, which was they tried to enter evidence on Wednesday of the testimony that didn't even give the people on the committee 24 hours, which is the minimum, to look at that evidence to see if it was real or not. And what did he present? He presented some checks for $35,000 for basically each month's payment for his retainer fee. Now, he tries to say that those were the checks sent to Stormy Daniels. And he also tried to say, he didn't try, he said this lie. He said, that is the reason why in the last week I've spent all this time going through boxes to find the evidence. The only evidence supposedly that we're ever going to see with Trump and the Mueller investigation and all of that, the only evidence we're ever going to see are these checks of Cohen that he supposedly dug into a box in the last week to find. Isn't that amazing? The guy has been up against Robert Mueller's special counsel and they didn't get these checks. He found them in the bottom of a box. These happen to be the checks that were sent to the whore. This is absurd. They went in and they stole all of his records already, both from his house that was under construction, from the hotel he was at, and from his storage unit. They took everything. For him to say now that he went through boxes and he found the only evidence we're ever going to see, and that evidence doesn't indicate anything except that Donald Trump wrote him a check for $35,000 over a number of months. That's his retainer fee, folks. That is a huge, fantastic lie, and that's the only evidence we're going to see. Now, remember that Stormy Daniels' insane lawyer, Michael Avenatti, did I say that right?
Yes.
He supposedly showed a CD, and so did she, Stormy, as if it was evidence. Remember, when the whole thing came out in court, what was on that CD? A snippet of a recorded, obviously secretly recorded, unknown of Trump for just, 30 seconds, 35 seconds. And in it, you hear some mumbling, and then you hear him say, "Hey, can I get a Diet Coke?" That's the only evidence they had for her trial, and it was thrown out, and she lost. And it's, the horror and her lawyer. And the lawyer didn't get paid, by the way. I love that.
Well, they're both whores.
Yeah, they're both whores. She had to pay Trump. Is anybody talking about that? So Michael Cohen is saying that paying that whore, who the whore didn't have enough evidence to prove that she had anything to do with Trump, already kicked out of court. Not kicked out. She lost the case. Why aren't we mentioning that? Because Cummings, the man who set up the parameters of the questioning,
Elijah Cummings, the
head of the Oversight Committee, didn't allow any of these questions. And I'm going to say it now before Betsy does. And no questions about
Felix Sater. And of course, when I heard that the parameters were set, I went, oh my gosh, so they can't ask any of those questions because it would interfere with the Russia investigation.
And the great thing is, you had Jim Jordan there with 2,500 pages of the basically the court documents and the exact words and his plea deal and his everything that he said during the court case, where he then is now going to jail for 3 years. And by the way, they're giving him a really easy sentence. And it's a super easy sentence. Why is that? Because he cooperated. And what was he cooperating with? His cooperation was the statement that he made, that he read before he was called into Congress, basically on the carpet for his lies, his cheating. He's already lied to the Congress before. So how does he get to come in and make a statement that is all packed full of lies, like the ones I said to you before? Every bit of it's a lie. I mean, literally every bit of it, that he sat in meetings with Donald Trump where he said racist things and he's a liar and he's a cheat. Not one speck of evidence was presented except for these checks. And nobody got to ask any real questions. Oh my goodness, I wish I would have been there. I have so many questions
and the whole thing
embarrass him.
Was set up by Lanny Davis, who is Cohen's attorney, but is also best chums with the Clintons. I mean, really.
For free.
And
Lanny Davis took the case for free.
They sit there and they can lie to each other.
Oh, because Lanny Davis knows that you can lie, so therefore he wrote those lies for Michael Cohen to stand up, to swear that he was going to tell the truth, and then to say, I am a liar.
It's an act.
And they know that they can lie like crazy, and that's the reason he did. Now, we already have at least one criminal referral directly from yesterday's testimony saying that he perjured himself multiple times, at least 6-8 times. He directly said the opposite and delivered it like it was a propaganda message, as if his life depended upon it. I'll tell you why, and I don't know, Betsy, you might already know this, but it might take you a little bit as a shock to find out why he did what he did. And it's very clear why he did what he did.
Who? Who's the he?
Cohen.
Cohen.
Michael Cohen.
Okay.
Why did Michael Cohen turn on Trump? Well, we'll go into that in a minute. So he lied over and over again because we literally have his words that he has sworn as testimony in the trial, and they were read to him, and he still lied. I mean, you have Jim Jordan did a brilliant job of just dismembering this person, how anyone could believe in him. And at the end, Elijah Cummings, is that his name? Yeah, says, well, then it's obvious a crime that Trump has committed a crime here. All they wanted was something impeachable. That's what the whole thing was about. Clearly, Crossfire Hurricane and everything from there, but before that, the Russian dossier was all about catching Trump in some crime. They just can't find one. They can't find one. So what happened? The only crime they have him now with is the following. Somehow, even though Stormy Daniels lost her case, which basically means she's a liar, she lost her case against Trump and had to pay him. I think she had to even pay his lawyer fees, if I'm not mistaken. And so that is what it's based upon, the following, that Michael Cohen said that he paid her. Doesn't have a check for that. Can you please show us the wire transfer? Can you please show us the check to Stormy Daniels' lawyer, Michael Avenatti, or to Stormy? Don't have one. So then you show us a check that's fake, that's probably your retainer. Okay, so that's not evidence. And then you pled guilty to something that isn't a crime, which is that you say, and you're pleading of guilty for election fraud, irregularities, because you paid a whore secretly and supposedly have a non-disclosure agreement, which nobody's ever seen, so that's another lie, that Trump signed, which he didn't sign anything. And that is what the only crime that they have Trump on. That and, also, now let's go back a little tiny bit, because in his testimony yesterday, Michael Cohen says that he knows, I love this, because they couldn't get Roger Stone's connection to Julian Assange, the supposed Russian who supposedly hacked the DNC or received the hack from the Russians who hacked the DNC, all lies. That this is beautiful. Michael Cohen, on top of it, gives another whopper stating that he feels, and that he's certain that he feels that the Russians were connected to the Trump campaign and that the Trump campaign was connected directly to Julian Assange. He feels it. He has no evidence. And the other one that he feels, I love this one. The other, which is some more, this is supposed to be evidence that was supposed to be presented that would be impeachable, and they actually think they got impeachable evidence yesterday, but if you would have listened closely, you'd know it's all lies. So then they have the closed-door testimony before two other committees with Democrats who are going to lie about what was said in those meetings, and we can't really address it because it will be behind closed doors. So I sure do hope the criminal referrals yesterday for perjury will be followed through, because the lies are fantastic. But we got to hear yesterday, and this is beautiful. This is glorious. Michael Cohen is sitting in Trump Towers. Well, no, it doesn't say where he's sitting. Michael Cohen is sitting with Trump. And supposedly, Donald Jr. comes in and whispers something to Trump, goes behind his desk, which, according to Michael Cohen, means it's a deep, dark secret, and it must be awful, because he went behind the desk to whisper into Trump's ear something, and then he heard him say something about the meeting is set. So Michael Cohen says that he's certain that means the meeting at Trump Towers with Natalia Veselnitskaya, her two Russian spies, and then the two FBI Russian assets that were being used, as well as, Manafort, Trump Jr. and this. So that then it supposedly associates Donald Trump with the Trump Tower meeting. That's supposed to be evidence that, he says he had a feeling. He had a feeling. Oh my goodness. Now, I'd really like to go on with the other evidence, but it's the same kind of nonsense. The other evidence is that they say that he lied to Congress and that by the way, he blames himself of being a liar and being a bad person and being a fixer on Trump in his opening statement, first sentence. And then throughout the whole thing, he blames Trump because of his loyalty to Trump, his astounding loyalty to Trump is why he did all these bad things. And so then they couldn't ask him any real questions about the Trump Towers in Moscow, in the Crimea, and in Georgia. No real questions were asked about that, because then they might have said, did you go there? He would have said no. Is there any paperwork on this? He would have had to say no. Do you have any evidence this happened? He'd have to say no. He then said all he knows, which is that throughout those months, he would talk to Trump, and Trump on the wall, as he's walking along, would say to him, hey, how's the Russian thing going? And then Michael Cohen would say, yeah, well, it's not really going very well, blah, blah, blah. That's because Michael Cohen wasn't even involved in the Trump Tower deals.
It was Felix Sater.
It was his best friend from childhood.
And Felix Sater is a James Comey FBI asset. And that's what they do not want the American people to hear.
And that's why, basically, the questions that were limited by Mr. Cummings for the public hearing supposedly have things to do with the next crazy thing. Here's another crazy lie he made up, which can't be substantiated. He says that in the Southern District of New York, he can't talk, that Trump is being investigated, so Michael Cohen cannot talk about certain elements of the case. That's completely nonsense. Where are these cases in the Southern District of New York? That was supposed to be Eric Schneiderman's replacement, who came out too early and said she was taking all of her resources for the Attorney General office for the state of New York and going to focus it on going after Trump. So probably, that line was written a long time ago, hoping that they can get something on Trump. And, they still go after him for any tiny thing they can. But if the FBI has already cleared him and his father and the whole thing, then what do they have? They have silly things. We've gone over them, but does Michael Cohen have any of that? No. Remember, Michael Cohen is the person who recorded his own clients to use it as blackmail. Michael Cohen is the person who, though he did not get a job in the White House, and this was the other issue he lied about yesterday, he said that he did not want a position in the White House. No, he was desperate to get basically the top position he could with the top title that he could get. And he made everyone fully aware of that because he was supposedly Trump's lawyer for way back. Trump has a slew of lawyers, and yes, he was his liar, his cheater, his bad person, his fixer. Why? Because Trump knew he worked for the mob. Trump knew who his wife was, and here it is, Betsy. The reason that you got to see Michael Cohen in the worst scenario of his life, look at the way he answered those questions. Look at the way he carried himself. He was a tortured, horribly tortured man because he's used to lying, but now he has to lie as if he's being convincing and he's not a lawyer. He is actually the person, put on the stand. Mueller has so much evidence against Cohen and his wife that it went back to Cohen's wife's dad. Remember when Trump said, don't forget to look into who his wife is and who his wife's father is.
Yes.
So we have the inside skinny. I don't know if it's true or not, but it is said that Mueller threatened putting his wife in jail for 30 years because she is so dirty, because her father's so dirty, and because he shuffles all of his money through her name. And we also know that he was also asked, have you ever defrauded a bank? And he says no. Well, how many counts were there? There were like 7 or 8 counts of fraud, on and on and on. No, the man, and that was the tip of the iceberg. They didn't get into his illegal dealings with his taxi medallions or the mob or his real estate deals or any of that. Did Trump do any real estate deals with him? No. No. How come he's not a rich man? Because Trump didn't trust him. Did Trump do any deals with Felix Sater? He told Felix Sater, bring me the rich people that you say can create Trump Soho. And he did. They just happened to be Russians. Felix happens to be a Russian. That's not illegal. So what? He built another tower. Would he have built one in Moscow because Vladimir Putin said he wanted it there? Absolutely. And it wouldn't have been illegal. because at the moment that he received the nomination from the Republican National Committee, he severed all of his ties to his companies and gave it to his family. So the Emolument Act couldn't be exerted upon him, and that's why he can't have that exerted upon him, because he perfectly did exactly what is legal and what the lawyer said to do. Same thing with his tax forms. He can't give you tax forms that aren't actually filled out, because when you're that rich, you're about 5 years behind on your tax forms. So he wouldn't be giving his current tax forms, and that's what they want. Last year's tax forms to see if he has any Russian ties. Well, he doesn't. Would he have wanted Russian ties? Yes. Is that illegal? No. Did Michael Cohen get him any Russian ties? No. Did they bring out the truth of who Michael Cohen was? No. Listen to Michael Cohen's testimony, and you will hear the testimony. You may have to...
Did Felix Sater, James Comey's asset, try to set Trump up?
Again and again through Cohen.
Okay, so how come they don't have Felix Sater in there? How come they're not questioning him?
Remember, Felix Sater said he wrote a letter about sanctions for Russia because they said that's why they were taking down Michael Flynn and why Sessions had to recuse himself, sanctions for Russia. So there was a fake sanctions letter, tried to pass it through to Cohen. Cohen told him to go jump off a cliff because, he knew that wouldn't work. And so then what happened? Felix comes out into the news again and again and again. 5-6 times he's on network news talking about this letter of sanctions he gave to Cohen, that he had proof that Cohen gave it to Trump. All lies. Did they bring that up in the hearing? No. Did they really get to ask any real questions about Felix Sater? No. Did they ask any questions about what he lied to Congress about before? No. Because why? They're lies. All he could do is lie more about lies because he didn't have anything to do with those deals. He wishes he had something to do with those deals. So his lies are so profound because he's defending his wife. He goes to jail for 3 years. That's his plea deal. They protect him so he's not whacked in jail because he as people have already said, he'll be whacked in jail because he's in the mob. No, they'll protect him in jail, and then his wife won't go into jail for 30 years, and they won't tell his wife about all of his girlfriends. When you talk about why he was a fixer, it's because he was into the underworld, the dirty, 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 dirty underworld. If you want to talk about whores, it would be Michael Cohen and his whores. Why do you think Michael Cohen did all those deals and didn't even mention it to Trump? Stormy Daniels had nothing to do with Trump. Show us a speck of evidence. Michael Cohen, show us any evidence. Your fake checks don't work. Your feelings that he was connected to Russia don't work. Your feelings that he was connected to the Trump Tower meeting doesn't work. Your obfuscation doesn't work. Your omission about Felix Sater doesn't work. No, yeah, Michael Cohen, your testimony was one of the worst I've ever seen in my life.
But here's the thing. That Stormy Daniels, she's not an attractive woman, and Trump is used to very attractive woman. Look at Melania and compare that to Stormy Daniels. Really? That's who you think that he hadn't had sex with?
And then the new lady who says that Trump approached her somewhere and kept getting closer and closer and then tried to kiss her and she turned her head and he just kissed her corner of her lip. Okay, he was with the most beautiful women in the world in the Miss Universe pageant and the Miss America pageant, all the pageants, right? Never one single complaint. And he's walking around the women who are practically naked, changing their outfits and he was everywhere. He ran it like he runs all of his business, very hands-on without, in this case, putting his hands on. He never grabbed nothing. He never kissed nobody. And there ain't a single speck of evidence that has ever been brought forth that he's done anything inappropriate sexually or anything racist or that he's been caught in direct lies like Michael Cohen has. Michael Cohen was a paid liar. That was his job. Basically, here's how it works. Michael Cohen was the mob. If Trump didn't pay off the mob wouldn't have allowed him to be a real estate agent in New York, especially one who was connected to the Russians on such a huge level, especially when the billionaire oligarch Russians were pouring money into New York and to the city of London nonstop, and Trump wanted that money. Of course he did. So, yeah, he sold things to billionaire Russians because it was completely legal. What is your people's problem, Democrats, to think you can say that Hillary, who gave $450 million to build a new uranium plant at the last nuclear summit with Obama and Hillary and Putin. And then you want to talk about Trump in collusion with Russia? You want to talk about Uranium One and Rosatom and 10X and 10M? Please. Trump is as clean as a whistle. And Michael Cohen, there's nothing you can do except show us how dirty, filthy, muddy, pathetic, lying, stinking, manipulated person you are. But I feel sorry that the mob has your wife, and they, unfortunately, just as Trump said, just as Mark Meadows said, you're really fighting for the life of your family, and your family doesn't even know how bad you are. They're only finding out now after your testimony, your public testimony yesterday. It was disgraceful, and it will probably get you more perjury charges because now Betsy has shown that we need to hold everybody to the same accountability. And there have been bills put on the floor of the Senate and the House to say equal accountability for everybody. If you lie like a Manafort or a Stone, you go to jail, is what, they want to send Stone to jail. So if you lie, Michael Cohen, you go to jail for more than 3 years.